Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to dive deep into the absolutely remarkable 2,000-year history of how a collection of islands fundamentally shaped the modern world. We're looking at a place that was once the epicenter of an empire so vast, it was famously said the sun literally never set on it. But how did it actually get there? And what does it look like now? Well, that is exactly what we're going to uncover today.
So here is the massive question that frames our entire journey today. Think about it. How did a relatively modest landmass, sitting out in the North Atlantic, manage to project its power across the entire globe, become an absolute superpower, and then, eventually, experience a rapid unraveling of that exact same empire? To understand this, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning of its recorded history.
Picture this. It's the year 1066. William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy, has just landed his invasion forces on English shores. But as he steps off the boat, he stumbles on the soft sand and falls completely flat on his hands. Now, for his army, looking on, this seemed like a terrible omen, right? A clear sign of failure before the battle even kicks off. But William, he totally kept his wits about him. He stood up, grabbed handfuls of the sand, and shouted to his troops, "See, the land of England is in my hands." He took a moment of sheer panic and flipped it into a brilliant psychological triumph. And that sheer force of will, it changed history forever. To make sense of all this history, we've organized our explainer into 6 quick chapters. 1. Birth of an island nation. 2. Conquerors and the Magna Carta. 3. Religion, royals, and revolution. 4. Uniting the kingdom. 5. Rise and fall of empire. And 6. Modern Britain's economy. Let's get right into it.
Chapter 1. Birth of an Island Nation, from the Celts to the Channel Tunnel.
When we say Britain or the United Kingdom, we're usually talking about a major landmass comprising England, Scotland, and Wales alongside Northern Ireland. But geographically, it is so much more than that. This main territory is surrounded by a massive network of over 6,000 smaller islands. It's really incredible. And while for centuries it was naturally protected by the sea, kind of acting like a giant moat, that isolation completely changed in 1993. That is when engineers finally completed a massive railway tunnel running directly beneath the sea, permanently linking this island fortress to mainland France and the rest of Europe.
You see, for the longest time, this island actually wasn't doing the conquering. It was the ultimate prize. Back in the 6th century BC, Celtic tribes arrived from Central Europe. Then, in 54 BC, the famous Roman general Julius Caesar paved the way, leading to a Roman occupation that divided the land and stuck around for nearly 400 years. After the Romans packed up and left, the 5th century brought the Anglo-Saxons, who established a really strong rule. But the invasions didn't stop there. By the 11th century, the Danes and Norwegians, the Vikings, swept right in and conquered the territory. So this island was essentially a melting pot of continuous, forceful change from the very beginning.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, Conquerors and the Magna Carta, the Foundation of Law. All right, fast forward to 1215. The crucial point here is that King John is in deep trouble. He's facing an imminent rebellion from his own nobles and is, essentially, totally cornered. To save his rule, he is forced to sign the Magna Carta. This was a monumental document packed with 63 clauses. And why does this matter? Well, for the very first time, it actually limited the absolute power of the monarch over things like taxes, religion, and justice. Now, the king immediately tried to get the Pope to annul it, but it didn't matter. The precedent was already set. The Magna Carta laid the very early groundwork for parliamentary government and the rule of law as we know it today.
Chapter 3. Religion, Royals, and Revolution. A Tug of War.
Now things get incredibly chaotic during the Tudor period, sparking a deadly, whiplash-inducing religious tug-of-war. It all started fracturing when King Henry VIII wanted a divorce, the Pope straight up refused, and Henry just broke away to form the Church of England. But it was his daughters who really intensified the conflict. Queen Mary I, a strict Catholic, took the throne, and during her brief 5-year reign, she actually burned 300 Protestants alive in a ruthless attempt to restore Roman Catholic dominance. But then, her half-sister, Queen Elizabeth I, takes over. Elizabeth was a Protestant. She instantly removed the Pope's influence from England all over again. And in 1587, to secure her throne against Catholic plots, she ordered the execution of her own cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. We're talking about a nation violently swinging back and forth between faiths based entirely on whoever happened to be wearing the crown.
Chapter 4. Uniting the Kingdom, the Evolution of a Nation.
It's fascinating to watch how the famous Union flag, often called the Union Jack, perfectly tracks the shifting borders of these divided lands. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. In 1707, the Act of Union officially merged England and Scotland under one single parliament in London, combining their national flags. Then nearly a century later, in 1801, Ireland was formally added to the Union. This updated the flag again and changed the nation's name to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. But as we know, unions are rarely static. In 1921, after a really fierce struggle, Southern Ireland separated to become an independent republic. Northern Ireland, however, remained, and that gives us the exact modern boundaries of the UK that we recognize today.
Chapter 5. Rise and Fall of Empire, the World Wars and Decolonization.
By the late 19th and early 20th century under Queen Victoria, Britain was an unparalleled industrial and imperial powerhouse, just absolute peak global dominance. But the 20th century exacted a devastating toll. Yes, Britain emerged victorious in both World War I and World War II alongside the Allies, but at what cost? These military victories were straight-up economic disasters. The wars completely drained their financial reserves. And on top of that, during World War II, the relentless bombings by the German Air Force left literally half of London in absolute ruins. The empire's back was essentially broken. They simply no longer had the money or the resources to maintain an iron grip over their massive global territories.
What followed was a swift and profound decolonization process that redrew the global map in just a matter of decades. The most massive turning point happened in August 1947, which marked the end of direct British rule in South Asia, resulting in the partition and the creation of independent India and Pakistan. And this basically triggered a domino effect across their Asian and African territories. We see a really rapid succession of nations finally gaining their independence: Ghana in 1957, Cyprus in 1960, and later Zimbabwe in 1980. The empire on which the sun never set was returning power to the local populations.
And right in the middle of this incredible period of post-war transformation, decolonization, and trying to rebuild a broken nation, a young woman took the throne. In 1952, Queen Elizabeth II became the monarch. She was just 25 years old, and she remained a steady, stabilizing figure for an absolutely staggering 70 years, witnessing almost the entirety of Britain's modern transformation firsthand.
Chapter 6. Modern Britain's Economy, Industry, and Agriculture.
So, where does all this vast history leave the British state today? Well, despite losing its massive empire, the UK remains a highly industrialized nation. Today, about 30% of the population is directly engaged in industry, with specific regions acting as highly specialized export powerhouses. You've got Manchester, globally renowned as a hub for textiles. Up in Scotland, Glasgow became incredibly famous for its massive shipbuilding operations. And cities like Birmingham and Sheffield really drove the nation forward with their massive iron and steel factories, exporting heavy machinery, cars, and trucks all over the world.
But here is a totally mind-blowing stat for you regarding their agriculture. Only 2% of the British population works in agriculture, just 2%. But because they use such highly advanced, intensive farming techniques, this tiny sliver of the workforce actually produces enough food to feed a full 50% of the entire country's population. It is a stunning example of modern efficiency, completely replacing the sprawling agrarian societies of the past.
As we wrap up this explainer, we've traveled a really long way, from Celtic tribes and Roman legions all the way to the signing of the Magna Carta. We've seen the fiery religious wars of the Tudors, the literal stitching together of the Union Jack, and the dramatic rise and rapid fall of a massive global empire. So I want you to look at the world around you right now. Consider the global borders, the legal systems you live under, the languages we speak, and the global economy. How much of your daily reality is still rippling from the decisions made on this single, complex island over the last 2,000 years? Think about it. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.